Hi friends, how's it going? How you doing today? Hopefully today finds you well. Today I am doing the next review in my palette roulette series in which I pick a palette and I utilize it throughout the week and I come back to you and talk to you about all my experiences with said palette. We do some live swatching, I show you some pictures of the looks I'm able to create, and then we pick another palette. Today we're actually going over the Glamlite Paint Pro palette, and I'm super excited to talk to you all about it. For those of you new here, hi, my name is Donna. So happy to have you here today. I am a lover of all things high-end, colorful beauty and self-care. I also work in the beauty industry, so I like to bring you all the education I'm receiving in my position as a district leader for Ulta Beauty. And basically that means you're going to get a lot of reviews here on this channel. You're also going to see a lot of hauls because I haul in gratis, as well as my addiction to shopping for said makeup. And yeah, just general chit chat. I like to talk about makeup. And you people are my people. So this is where I come to do that. And if that sounds like something you're interested in, I hope that you'll stick around, keep on watching, subscribe to the channel, maybe hit that notification bell. You know you want to. So with that said, let's jump into this review today of the Glamlite Paint Pro palette. As said in the intro, today we are jumping into the Glamlite Paint Pro palette. This palette is, looks like this. It is so cute, and I know that when I first initially started thinking about Glamlite Beauty, it's because the mother to this palette, this is the little baby palette to the mother paint palette, not Paint Pro, but the bigger version of this guy. That is what initially drew my attention to Glamlite. Glamlite is really known for like their food theme palettes. Lately they have been doing like wine theme. I know that they have a Hershey's chocolate theme one, but this one is what, well, the mother of this one is really what drew my attention to the brand, because I'm an artist, because I like to paint, because it was just the cutest thing I had ever seen in my life. Last year in November, they did this giant sale for Black Friday, of course, not last year, 2021, last year, 2020. And I did pick up a ton of stuff from Glamlite. This was one of those things that I picked up in addition to the mother version of this palette, the paint palette. I haven't used the paint palette yet, but this one is the one that I decided to pick up for this week for my review. This is what the paint palette looks like. This is the Paint Pro. Sorry, this is the $38 version of the paint palette. It does have a 5-star review on Glamlite with 6 reviews, so let's just kind of pretend like those don't exist, because I'm not really certain that that is a true depiction of what this palette really could like rank, right? It has 18 shadows in it, and each one of those shadows has 0.03 ounces of product in it, and it is the neon version of a rainbow palette. So while it looks very much like a rainbow palette, it's just a smidge bit different because it's more on the neon spectrum versus the primary spectrum, which I do believe the paint palette, the initial one, was more along the lines of an actual rainbow palette. It has an 18-month shelf life, and the packaging of it is just super cute. You guys can see my fingers sticking out here. It does indeed look like a painter's palette. All of the shadows are protected by this cloudy, clear, like protection top, I guess. And the palette is made to look like wood from an actual paint palette. I do think that it's cardboard, it's not wood, but that's okay. It is pretty like heavy duty. It feels like a heavier version of cardboard. There might be, I don't think any part of it is wood, but on the back of it, it does have like information on the palette. It tells you which of these shadows is pressed pigments and which of them are actually slated as eyeshadows. There are only 6 of the shadows in this palette that are not pressed pigments. For those of you that don't know anything about pressed pigments are depicted as not safe for eye use because they have dyes in them versus, you know, the other products that can make up a color in an eyeshadow. But because it has pressed pigments in it, it is 100% vegan. It is also 100% cruelty free. This is what the outer cart container of the package looks like, and I think it's just so, so cute. I love that it's got like the paint, you know, buckets over here and a paintbrush, and then the back of it does have a picture of the palette, shows you exactly what's in it, and it gives you a larger version of what's on the back of the palette over here. So if you're like blind like me, you can read it just a little bit more clearly. It does come with a brush, a flat shader brush, and that flat shader brush is a very nice brush. The whole reason why they put it in there is so that you had a brush that you could pick up these shimmers with, but I honestly think that these shimmers work much better with your fingers than they do any brush. It is a limited edition palette. It was launched holiday 2020, and it was only supposed to be for holiday 2020. It's still available, still for sale. I mean, as clear as yesterday when I was looking it up on the Glamlite website to make sure it was still for sale, it was still for sale. So you can still pick it up. I had a really good experience with this palette, but I will say that it's not like a palette that you can utilize on its own, right? It is full of just the colors. There isn't really a white in here except for this one here, which is actually a duochrome, and it's not one that you could use like, say, you know, on your brow bone. I would say you could put it in your inner corner if you wanted to. It's a beautiful shade. I'll show you the swatches, but there isn't a whole lot of like honest to God depth into this palette, really, when you think about it. Like, there's no browns, there's no blacks. As dark as some of these shades are, that is just, it doesn't translate as dark as it is on your eyes. So I had to reach into other palettes. There's actually a yellow eye look that you'll be seeing, like a yellow orange one that you'll be seeing, that I also dipped into another palette for the brown that's in that eye look, because this doesn't have a brown. And while I could like mix colors to get there, I did find that as you layered shadows, some of these just were not kind to others to work with. The mattes are super dry, super pigmented, but super dry, super hard pressed. That helped in the fallout aspect because there isn't a whole lot of fallout. There's also not a whole lot of dustiness in the pan, but it didn't help when it came to layering the shadows on top of each other. I just don't think that some of them played nicely with others, specifically these ones here. These ones here did a really great job. Most of these are in my eye look. I do have this one in my eye look today as well. It is kind of the purplish color that you see in the eye look because, you know, red and blue make purple. But these purples were horrible to really kind of try to work with. Blue was actually a quite nice blue, and I didn't have a problem working with it. It's also on my under eye along with this green, which was the better of the greens, but still leaned very, very patchy and voided quite a bit when you were trying to blend it. I worked with these purples in an eye look and got so pissed off at the eye look that I took the eye look off and just went barefaced that day because I spent 2 hours trying to make the eye look work, and it just didn't work. It continued to void, it continued to be patchy, it just was awful. They perform okay on their own-ish. As soon as you started to try and blend them out or blend them into other colors, they started to become patchy, saturated, voiding. It was a hot mess. The metallics in here are super, super pretty, but they're super, super chunky unless you are using your fingers. So when we go back to that flat shader brush that comes with it, and specifically for applying these shimmers, I do think it does a good job, but I also think that these shimmers just don't work with the brush. So if you are a brush only kind of person, well, don't work best with the brush. So the blue, this blue on my eyes today is packed on with my finger and then gone over with the brush, and especially in the inner corner of this eye because this eye continues to water and kind of be a bitch today. You know, it's really great for blending out. Having that really precise packing brush for blending out these shimmers is really great, but I do think that these don't pop as much as they could unless you're using your finger. This white one, you might as well not even try with the brush because it reminds me of like a Super Shock. It moves around quite a bit in the pan. I'm sure that you guys can see that. I can foresee this one being panned quite easily. I can also foresee you going in just too ham on that shadow specifically and going straight to the bottom of the pan. It reminds me of a Super Shock, only maybe a little bit more creamy. That one you can't use with the brush. That one just doesn't apply with the brush. The other ones apply with the brush, but are much better with your finger. This is, like I said, different from other rainbow palettes because yes, it's a rainbow palette, but it's it steers more on that neon spectrum. With that said, I do think that because of that, it works best with like a white primer to blank out your lid, blank out any kind of veining or any kind of color that you have on your eyelid, to bring those colors really to fruition as far as the pop of color on your lid. But I did this whole entire eye look with just the Ulta Beauty matte eye primer, which has, you know, quickly become one of my favorite eye primers to use. And I still think that the color pops on my eyes. You be the judge, you tell me. So like the color saturation is definitely there. This is best with a primer. I would say if you're going to try it without a primer, don't. Like, they don't blend super well without a primer, to be frank. But also, like, just the pure longevity of the shadows when you're using a primer is what really sets it apart. I think with a primer, like, I see like 12 hours worth of wear on these, and without a primer I saw maybe 6. So like, you're cutting your wear time in half by not wearing a primer. Before visible fading, of course, your eye look is still going to be there. It's just going to look a hot mess if you don't use a primer with it. I would also say don't use a tacky primer. So that purple eye look I was talking about, I spent 2 hours on it because the first time I tried it, I used a tacky primer and I thought it was the tacky primer that was the problem. So I took off the eye look and started over with my Ulta Beauty matte primer, which I have been utilizing for months now on eye looks and have had 0 problems. But I got the same kind of inconsistency with the purple shadows with that eye primer as I was with the tacky primer. So then I tried the tacky primer with a different color, like a green eye look, and it did the same thing, but those shadows worked perfectly fine without that tacky primer. It was an orange eye look. Those shadows work perfectly fine without that tacky primer. So if you do use a tacky primer, make sure that you set it with like a, you know, a bone color or a skin tone color shadow so that you're not battling that whole thing. Because this has pressed pigments in it though, this will stain your eyes. You can't really get away from it with these colors in an eye look. So let's look at the swatches, and I'm going to swatch the shimmers first just because I have that white still on my finger, and I think that way we can get the glitter out of the way. We're going to start from the white and go around this way because I swatched them completely backwards. The first one is the titanium white, which is just a really beautiful duochrome. Do you see that? It's got like this purple green shift to it. I know that you guys can't see the purple, but man, from the side, this is by far my favorite shadow in here, even though this is by far the most finicky shadow in this palette. I'm going to scooch over just a little bit. Okay, then we have this one, which is Electra Pink. This is in my eye look today. It is like on the outer like third of the eye look. Is such a beautiful shimmer. This one isn't like the titanium white one in that you can apply this one with a brush. But I mean, I will stand on that mountain and say these work so much better with your finger. You're only going to see like this kind of kick up or this kind of impact by utilizing your fingers. This is cadmium yellow, and this one is a beautiful like yellow gold, but it also kind of leans a little bit green in an eye look. It is so shiny, so bright, so beautiful. This one is called Aqua, straight up Aqua. It is what is on the lid of my eye today. It does have a little bit of a silver shift to it. I think that you guys can see that. So even though this one isn't slated as a duochrome, I would say this one is also duochromatic. And then we have this one here, which is a cobalt blue, beautiful, just dark, dark blue shimmer. And again, just such a beautiful blue shade. These, again, work best with your finger, y'all. So what you're seeing here is what you will get on your eye look if you use your finger to apply. If you use a brush, this isn't necessarily what you're going to see. The last shimmer is this one here, and it is just called Purple. And it is, you know, I mean, this wasn't my favorite shimmer, if I'm honest with you. It didn't pack well. It didn't like layer well. It just followed suit with the matte purples, if I'm honest. So like these are just so pretty and truly the whole reason for this palette, in my opinion, because the mattes just aren't it. Those are the kind of shimmers though that are going to leave all kinds of glitter all over your face if you let them. But I will say, if you put them on with your finger, there's like next to no fallout with these guys. So they're just creamy enough that you don't really see a whole lot. I mean, fallout is imminent if you use a brush. If you use your finger, I didn't really have a problem with fallout using my finger. Okay, so now I'm going to do the mattes, and we're going to start this purple and go around to the red. Okay, so we have Indigo, which is the dark blue purple. You guys, these are all mattes that I'm doing now. So then we have Dark Violet, which is kind of a medium purple. It doesn't swatch well. It also doesn't, like I said, doesn't perform well. None of the purples really did. Then we have this one, which is Orchid, is a light purple. Again, doesn't swatch well, doesn't really work well. They are very pigmented, I will say that, but they do take a lot of building if you want to get the like real deep dark opacity that is present in the pans. And then if you're doing that, then you're saturating them too much and they don't want to move, they don't want to blend. So this one is called Azure. It is a true blue shadow, and this one is one of the ones that is an eyeshadow, not a pressed pigment. Then we have Viridian Green, and Viridian Green is also an eyeshadow, not a pressed pigment. It is a beautiful Kelly green. You guys can see the staining that's present just from being on my hands, or my fingers, for a couple seconds. Then we have this one, which is called Turquoise. It is also an eyeshadow, not a pressed pigment, and it is a light aqua teal color. So pretty, beautiful in an eye look, but it doesn't really perform very well, if I'm honest. Then we have a Lime, which is a bright chartreuse lime green. All right, then we have this one, which is called Yellow Ochre, and it is kind of a mustard yellow. On an eye look, it doesn't perform as bright as I really wanted. I really wanted like bumblebee orange or yellow, you know, and that just wasn't happening with this guy. And then we have this one, which is called Tangerine. It was a beautiful orange. I really dig it. But again, it didn't perform, unless it was over white, it didn't perform as bright and brilliant as I wanted it to, or as bright and brilliant as it is in the pan. And then this one is called Coral Red. It's more like fire orange, you know, like neon fire orange. That's what it reminds me of, fire coral. It shows up more as a pink, honestly, in an eye look, not a red. And I think that's really what it's supposed to be anyways, but I don't know why they called it coral, because it's definitely not orange. The last two shadows I'm going to try and squeeze onto this same hand, because I just don't see any reason why not. We have Magenta, which I'm going to put here. This is Magenta. And Magenta is, you know, just a red violet magenta color. It's very beautiful. I do think that it and that coral red up there kind of look the very same in an eye look, if I'm honest. And then we also have this one here, which is, oops, that's not it. Dang it. Let's do it down here. This one here, which is Crimson Red. You guys can see just how true red that is. That is also in my eye look today. And I was really actually quite pleased with this red. So the last several colors that I put in here, these two here and these two here, actually performed really, really well. The yellow actually performed really, really well too. So I guess these three and these two, the last 5 mattes in here, performed really, really well. But the rest of them kind of honestly didn't. Like, I just did not have a good time with those purples, and I really wanted to. The greens were better than the purples, but still not super. That blue azure, this one right here, actually performed really, really well, which I was shocked about. You know, I have only tried one other palette by them, and it is the Cake palette. And I just have to say, if you're going for like a rainbow palette from Glamlite, then that is the palette that I would suggest you get. This isn't it. I know that this one came out after the Cake palette, so it's really kind of weird to me that it has such a different kind of formula, because that Cake palette is so damn good. Can you guys see the staining on my hand? Yeah, it's going to stain. So bottom line, that is it. Yeah, I really did enjoy this palette. I really had a lot of fun working with it. It's that perfect palette for those Instagram worthy eye looks that I like to go after when I'm just sitting and playing with eyeshadow. You know, like, I love this look. If I'm honest with you, this is such a pretty eye look in my humble opinion. I had a good time with it. I loved working with this palette. I love playing with this palette, but it's not a one and done eyeshadow palette. It's definitely not going to be the only one that you can bring into your collection. What I thought was funny about this palette is that they boast it as a smaller, more compact, travel friendly version of their other one. And I'm like, you can't travel with this. How are you supposed, there's no magnets on it. This doesn't clasp close. How are you supposed to travel with this guy? Also, it kind of is a pain in the ass, right? The way it's built, so that, I mean, if you're going to set it on in like this, sure, it's good for sticking in a shelf, but it doesn't, like, I don't know. It is whatever. But you definitely, I wouldn't say that that is a travel version of a palette. So I am going to go pick my next palette. I will be right back. Okay, folks, next week I am going to use my Natasha Denona Purple Blue, and I am excited about it. So I will be traveling with my leadership next week, and I'm so excited to have my leadership in. But I also know that because my leadership is traveling with me, that I'm not going to have a whole lot of time to, like, worry about my makeup. And Natasha Denona is good to me, so I am going to keep her in my lineup for next week. She is going to be my palette of choice. There are 28 pans of shadow in this palette. I'm not going to get to all 28 pans, more than likely, but I have reviewed Natasha Denona time and time and time again. I mean, I think I have like something like 20 of her eyeshadow palettes, 22, I don't know, of her eyeshadow palettes. So, you know, I will go around and pick as many as I can, get a little bit of look for the different formulas in here, figure out what I'm going to do for eye looks, and then we'll talk about it next week. I'm really excited to review this palette. I've had this palette now in my collection for, I think, about a year, and I haven't even used it yet. So I'm really excited to try it, really excited to use it. I hope that you guys are too. The Paint Pro palette, let me know your guys' thoughts. I would be interested to hear from you if you have this palette, or if you've wanted this palette, what draws your attention to it, but also if you have this palette, how do you feel about it? Do you have any other Glamlite palettes, and would you choose this one over those? Because I can tell you, I wouldn't choose this one over even the Donut palette that I just reviewed not that long ago too. So I just definitely think that these, I had fun, don't get me wrong, but I just definitely don't think that these mattes perform as good as the mattes in those other two palettes. So the Donut palette only has like 4 mattes, but 4 of those mattes in here I think are in this, or roughly. Maybe I should like swatch them next to each other. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you're ready to come back next week, hear my thoughts on the Natasha Denona Purple Blue, and yeah, I'm really excited about it. So I hope you guys are having an awesome 2022 so far. Can you believe that today is the last day of February? I certainly think that this month just flew. I certainly think that the last 2 months just flew by, so there's that. I am excited to be out in my market this next week, and I hope that you guys also are excited for whatever is on your agenda for the next week. I hope that you and yours are safe and healthy and well and getting along as best you can in this crazy, chaotic world we're living in right now. Although it seems to be kind of spearheaded back to quasi-normal here soon. So there's that, at least for my state. And I hope that y'all are loving each other, but loving each other from afar. And until next time, bye friends.